All right, we are live with Alexander Mercouris, and we are so very happy and honored to have with us the first time on the Duran, Mel K from the Mel K Show. Thank you for joining us on the Duran. How are you doing today? How are you feeling? And also tell everybody that's watching us on all of our channels where is the best place to find you, and also talk a little bit about your book as well.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of the show, and I'm really excited to be here. I am found at themelkshow.com, and our main hub. Every night we put up a new show on Rumble and wherever free speech is still allowed. And I recently put out a book called Americans Anonymous, Restoring Power to the People, One Citizen at a Time, because it's time for America to admit that we have a problem, and in fact that we are the problem and that we are also the solution. So that's where I'm headed. I'm very excited about the win by Donald Trump on multiple levels, and but the work begins now. I don't feel that Trump won. I feel we the people won, and now we the people have to do the heavy lifting and not stop the momentum that got us here.
Yeah, absolutely agree,
Absolutely.
and that's what we're going to talk about
Yeah.
in this live stream. So
Yeah.
I will have all the links to the Mel K Show and to the book and everything as a pinned comment when the live stream is over. A quick hello to everyone that is watching us on Odyssey, on Rockfin. Hello to everyone on Rumble and on YouTube, and of course, a big shout out to our community on the duran.locals.com. And always a big thank you to all our moderators. Thank you so much to our moderators, Zariel, Brett, Peter, and everyone else that is helping to moderate this live stream. Alexander, Mel K, let's talk about the elections. What happens next, Alexander?
Well,
Let's discuss it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Can I just say, first of all, by the way, welcome to the Duran, Mel K. It is a joy to have you first time, and I'm sure we'll be having you many times from this point on. Obviously, momentous days in the United States, momentous days in the world, because the United States is still so pivotally important. In fact, as important, in my opinion, as it's ever been in terms of directing, changing the international atmosphere, the geopolitical atmosphere, the cultural, everything is going to change if the United States changes. And I was very, very interested that you use those words, we the people, because of course, those are the first words of the US Constitution. It always amazes me that people, especially outside the United States, overlook those words there at the beginning of the US Constitution, because that, in my opinion, programs the Constitution, which is at the foundation of the United States. Because people always say that the United States is an oligarchy or a plutocracy or things of that kind. But democracy is the state of power where the people exercise power. And the Constitution says that we, the people, the very first words in the Constitution. And I would argue that those words actually program the United States very intentionally by people who knew exactly what they were doing to democracy. And democracy in the United States has been eroding a lot in the last few years. We've seen restrictions on speech. We've seen attempted control. We've seen the politicization and weaponization of the legal system, and not just against one individual, by the way. I think there is a misunderstanding. It's been very, very much more widespread than the attacks on one particular person. And we've seen all of this happen in all sorts of places in the United States, in all sorts of spheres of life in the United States, and it all done in a very, very, I would say, sinister way as well. And I agree. I think this is a watershed election because the American people, who are, as I said, living in a society which is hardwired to go in a certain direction, finally said enough. We stop. We can't accept this any more. And you can see from the reaction in Europe, in the United States, amongst those people who were taking us in that direction, how angry and disappointed and frustrated they are. And the things they've been saying about the American people, by the way, in the media have been just incredible. I mean, insult after insult. Again, ignoring the fact about what democracy is supposed to be in a way which strongly suggests, to me at least, that these people actually don't believe in democracy. Just saying. I mean, if you're talking about the sovereign people in that kind of way, then clearly you don't really get democracy. But anyway, you have so much to tell us, Mel K. You were going to say that this is the start. This is where we begin. So tell us what needs to happen. Maybe it's a big question, but let's start with that, because you put it that way. I agree. It isn't just one person, a man of 81, very vital, energetic, exuberant, intellectually active man of 81, but he is, on the late side of 80, let's say. So it can't just be down to him. What do we need to do? What needs to happen now? And how's it going to, and what are the chances of pushing forward?
Well, I love what you said, because first and foremost, it has been Trump who said many times to this nation, they're not after me, they're after you, and I'm in the way, where I believe that it's bigger than that. I don't think they're after America. I think they're after the world, and America is in the way. And when I say that, I mean, because our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, even our founding and how we've gotten this far is a threat to who I believe is the dangerous, I call them the parent company, but a global public-private partnership of so-called stakeholders, that because we have been distracted and manipulated and propagandized, and the color revolution, I believe America has been living through since 2016, orchestrated by the same people that do it all over the world. The American people right now are so sliced into every single thing you can imagine, so that we can't unite long enough to see that there is a real problem here, and it's not each other. And it is not, your neighbor or the person on the other so-called side. Frankly, I don't believe that there's a left and right, Republican or Democrat party at all. I believe that we're being fed the illusion of both, but that they do not exist at this point. And I would pinpoint two things that have happened over the last several decades. First being the fraud that I believe is the United Nations and their goals for the world coming to fruition, especially when you look at the writings of Brzezinski and Kissinger and Rockefeller and the Crown, and many people that were involved in the post World War II world. And I think that for me, I have Americans Anonymous out, which I believe is a recovery book for American citizens, because in our country, I believe that we have a situation where we are, in fact, as sick as our secrets. And our secrets here in America, I believe the American people deserve to know the truth about a lot of our history that has been basically written by those that have slowly but surely eroded the Constitution and the Bill of Rights by design. The first coup, I believe, in America, if you can call the Federal Reserve one, but really was the murder of JFK in front of the whole world. Then those same people, I believe, putting themselves in the commission to check out what really happened to JFK, and then everyone going along with a Warren report that the whole world knows by this point is totally fraudulent. And from that point on, you have to look at America and realize that we've barely had one cover up after another cover up inside the intel community and the powers that be that don't benefit the United States. Frankly, they put a lot of things out there and say they hide them from the people for reasons of national security, when what we're learning and what I've learned is reasons of national security redactions usually mean our government committed a crime and they don't want to be held accountable. So the American people for far too long, starting in 1963, have been deceived on a massive scale by the people that are running this country, especially, the CIA, FBI, all the people that have known the truth, not just about JFK, but RFK and MLK and whatever has gone on since, all the way through, 9/11 and Las Vegas and Epstein and all these endless wars against a tactic known as terror that has never even been defined. The second thing that happened to America, the most unconstitutional thing, in my opinion, is the Patriot Act. And what happened after the Patriot Act is, which was written before 9/11, and in tandem with the very, I believe, nefarious and failed Project for a New American Century militarization plan for the world, while we weren't paying attention to what China and everyone else was doing, they went one direction, which is the one we should have gone, which is building up ports and transportation hubs and all that all over Africa and South America and Europe. We should have countered China's Belt and Road Initiative, but we didn't. We militarized the world. And when you look at it and you realize all the trillions of dollars that have disappeared from the Pentagon, we don't even know how far the black ops go. This agency, I think, needs to be torn apart and audited. USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, all these things went all over the world and facilitating color revolutions and all that without the American people even realizing, A, that it was happening, B, that we were being lied to support it, and C, that it's our money and in our name. And I think over the last 3.5 years, 4 years, most people have, whether it's because of the pandemic or because of people noticing finally that the media was really an intelligence operation propagandizing them, or how much Hollywood hates this country and presenting it, or the very ridiculous removing Joe Biden and putting in Kamala Harris as if that was normal. So they've just gone with, it's like the Yuri Bezmenov interview from the 80s. They've gone through the whole thing. And like I keep saying, the parent company, the public-private, global public-private partnership stakeholders have never been so close to their one world top-down totalitarian technocracy. And frankly, they've never been so far. And 2 days ago, I think they got their death blow, and I couldn't be happier. But that requires all the people of all of our nations to be honest about how we got here, and that it was our lack of participation, whether we were programmed and propagandized, distracted by media and television and endless false flags, whatever it was. It's still up to us to change our countries, because at the end of the day, the small group of politicians or oligarch billionaires that run America are a very small group. If the people can organize to make sure that, you know what, well, I think it was Madison that said, when the people fear the government, it's tyranny. When the government fears the people, it's liberty. And we have to start realizing that they only have their jobs because of us. And if we decide that they shouldn't have their jobs, we need to act like it, or at least act like oversight, and not wait for the 10 by 10 vassal state in the District of Columbia to clean up itself.
Mel, you've made some extremely important points. Let's start first of all with the point about division, about the American people being divided amongst each other, because this has happened to an extent that I have never known at any time. And by the way, I should say that this is a complete repudiation of the original purposes of the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which I am old enough to remember. The point about the civil rights movement was that it was all about bringing the American people, all of them, together, not separating them from each other. But now we see separation everywhere, or at least attempts to achieve separation everywhere. And one of the most extraordinary things about the media coverage of the last couple of days, 2 days since the election, is that there is a huge lamentation that isn't working, that people of different communities are actually combining and voting together to defend their democracy and to repudiate all of these things that are going on. And, you know, you get incredibly angry people saying, you know, why don't they understand that they need to be apart, that, you know, it's all got to be, you know, it's Hispanics and black people and men and women. They're not really understanding that they have to do all of these things and behave in this kind of way. So actually, I think that's a massively hopeful and good fact about what's just happened, that it is the end, or the beginning of the end, of that kind of politics. People right across the United States are discovering again that they have more in common with each other, that they're ultimately Americans, and that they're coming together as Americans to defend their politics and their way of life. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing is about the security state, the national security state, which emerged out of the Second World War and the Cold War. And you can see why. I mean, you can understand why. But it is important to say again how alien to the American system that is. If you know anything about American history, if you know go back to the 1920s, for example, people like Henry Simpson, who was Secretary of War at that time, he actually shut down the Navy's department, which was breaking codes and doing all kinds of things, because he said that gentlemen don't read each other's mail. It sounds incredibly idealistic today, but that was what he said. And the point was that was a Republican conception, because the idea of a national security state is essentially a secret state. And a secret state is an unaccountable state. And an unaccountable state is incompatible with democracy. And what you also discover, and you know that very well if you live in Europe, is that all of these various secret states eventually get together and start talking to each other and start coming up with all sorts of ideas and exchange information and do all sorts of things in ways that none of us know. So that is also what has been happening in the United States to an increasing degree and extent over the last 50, 60, 70 years. And look again at what the major case, the biggest of the cases that they brought about against Donald Trump, all about classified documents. The fact that he had information in his possession, which they decided was secret, and which the president of the United States, no less, shouldn't keep with him when he leaves office. I mean, that kind of thing. So an awful lot of that is going on. But all right, we have a president who does seem to be a lot more open to these things. He seems to have some understanding of this. He also, and I think this is one of the major reasons of his success. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I just want to just say
I like it. Yeah,
one
great.
of the reasons, and I've said this already, one of the reasons why he has been so successful is because he goes out, he talks to Americans, and he gives the impression of actually liking Americans. He is able to relate and talk to Americans and listen to them. And of course, you look at the others, all of his opponents, the vice president, and I don't get the impression that she likes meeting Americans like that at all, which is extraordinary. And again, in a system that is supposed to be a democracy. So anyway, we have that kind of a person. We have a president who is open to those things. We seem to have a vice president as well who thinks a little bit in that way, though I hope a lot in that way, actually. But what exactly do we have to do? Or rather, when I say we, I'm of course not an American. I am an outsider, but I completely agree that what goes on in the US is vitally important and important to the world. But what do Americans have to do? They've broken through. They have defeated this complex that we've seen. They've got someone that they want in the White House. How do they take this revolution forward?
Well, first and foremost, we have to realize that the vassal state of the District of Columbia is not our biggest problem. Our biggest problem individually is in our backyard, because like you said, post-World War II, there was an infiltration and a subversion of many of our institutions, not just throughout America, but locally as well, in our states, in our counties. When they started the infiltration, even if you go back to Operation Paperclip, but certainly that was one of many, it really did start in local school boards, in local judges, in local, as much as what was going on in DC, and I have a whole idea of many things that can be done there. But if the American people continue to sit out their own destiny and think other people that they don't know are going to be, making life where they live, their sphere of influence, their backyard, decisions for them without them participating and just picking a fake side, RD, then nothing's going to change. What needs to change is the American people need to redefine their relationship individually with their government and their fellow citizens and what their responsibility is. When Ben Franklin said you have a constitutional republic, if you can keep it, he meant literally if you can keep it. And that meant continuing down the path of getting together locally, discussing things. The people should be the oversight for the taxpayer dollars that disappear. The people should be the oversight for who's getting the local no bid contracts. The people should be the oversight for the surveillance state that has been installed in every nook and cranny of America and getting rid of it. You know, there's just a lot that people can do on the local level, but I believe also, and this is really laid out in my book, that we have been under a concerted and a very serious, like you said, nefarious effort to make us feel that we are helpless, that we can do nothing as individual citizens, that we don't know enough. The technocrats and the experts, you know, listen to them. Well, after COVID, thank God, hopefully that fallacy is gone. But at the same time, we need to be the oversight of our own domain, our own land, our own piece of America. We have to take what's happening here personally and not be distracted by reality TV and fake 24-hour news nonsense and these, you know, debates that are all based on nothing. And frankly, I think that was the biggest change and probably the best direction for the future, is that mainstream media, which has been totally corrupt, but was tripled down on its corruption when Barack Obama turned around the Smith-Mundt Act with the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act and made it legal for the news to propagandize us. And they've gone full steam ahead since. And I do believe that they have completely destroyed themselves and any credibility they had left, which is great, because I don't believe that MSNBC or CNN or even the Disney, ABC, again, I believe they work for the public-private partnership that runs America, like they're a parent company, and that we, the people, are just lucky to live here, first and foremost. Second, I think people have to realize that, like I said, a lot of our history isn't true, and it's not. It has been fed to us since, George H.W. Bush walked on the floor of the UN and said, we're going to have a new world order run by the UN. I think people have to understand he meant it, and that both Bushes, Clinton, Obama, Biden have all been in on it. So we haven't really had, like I said, since the murder of JFK, a real representative government that is working for us. And at this point, if you ask me, I believe that the intelligence blob that came out of the Patriot Act, that would be DHS, DNI, TSA, all of that, was used to be weaponized not against Donald Trump, but against any opposition to the long game plan of, say, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, which, of course, Barack Obama, without the consent of the governed or even explaining that it was a post-nation state plan, signed us on to in 2015. And what I was worried about is a lot of Americans, while we were seeing all the pomp and circumstance of the Wag the Dog Kamala campaign and the Wag the Dog, honestly, Biden entire regime time in office, what they weren't seeing was that Barack Obama had signed us on to something that would fundamentally transform the nation out of being the United States of America and more into being a globalist controlled, now that they have the technology to actually pull it off, communist/socialist entity run by the 0.001% of stakeholders, that go to Davos and Bilderberg and COP conferences. And those guys don't care about the nation states. They just, as Kissinger laid out, they care about regional control, like at the EU. And I believe that if they were going to go forward, Harris Biden had put out in September 2023 a renewed commitment to achieving Agenda 2030 by 2030. And that they were all in on that, and then delineated 17 goals and about $3 trillion of U.S. taxpayer money to all of the entities that are part of the octopus of global control, they call it, at the UN and all of its agencies and the people that run it, the banking cartel above them. So I think that all the plans were laid. Trump comes in 2016 and starts dismantling that. He takes us out of UNESCO, out of the World Health Organization, out of the Paris Climate Accords, asking NATO, what's the point and what are we doing and how are we doing this and all this stuff. Well, then the panic set in, and the parent company had a meeting out there. I believe Larry Fink to be the most powerful person in America right now, but sadly the most powerful person in many countries because of his standing at the top of the World Economic Forum and his close relationship with the CCP, who was also at the top of the World Economic Forum and the UN. He had a meeting shortly before COVID. Trump's dismantling this globalist thing. And he basically told all the bankers and billionaires that he sits on the board of the parent company with, that they would have to go direct to the people. And what did we see? COVID came 6 months later, and direct to the people, in my opinion, meant the banking and the multinational corporation, public-private partnership, skipping the governments and going directly to the people. And Larry Fink made a whole speech about controlling the behavior, and they're not going fast enough. And what he meant was they're not going fast enough to this, to them, utopian world government, but to me, dystopian, anti-human, anti-freedom future that they have decided, because they're the stakeholders somehow, they get to plan. And honestly, they saw it more in Europe first, but then you see through a lot of the executive orders that Biden put in, a lot of the infrastructure to make the digital public infrastructure work, which is what they need, which is the world basically being on a track and trace surveillance system like they built in China, which I believe they built for us. But at the end of the day, this is a big, big blow. And that's where people need to start, which is, well, how does this affect not just America, but the world? Because part of the last 3.5 years in this phase of this color revolution was to turn the world against the people of this country. And I believe that they were doing a lot of damage because people were looking at America and thinking, God, that they have a constitution. They're not doing anything. They're not standing up. But then you go back to January 6th, and you go back to 2020, and you go back to the pandemic and going direct, and you kind of realize, well, they had a plan. And luckily, shows like yours and hopefully mine and other people like that, really, as much as we didn't know how much work we were doing to change hearts and minds, I think we did a tremendous job, and that hundreds of millions of people all over the world started to see that maybe we're not each other's enemies. Maybe the enemy is above us, and that's where we are.
Absolutely. Can I just make a few quick observations? As somebody who worked as what you might like to call a functionary or a technocrat within government, which I have done, I can just say one thing. Firstly, if you do that, you understand how bad decisions which are made in secret always and invariably are. The idea that these people, though they really do believe it, by the way, they really do believe it. The idea that these people know better and are wiser and will come up with optimal solutions, and that, if you just get the sort of messy political process out of the way, everything will turn out well. That idea is so profoundly wrong. And if you saw how unimpressive the people who think that way also are, I mean, you would be under no illusions at all about any kind of technocratic paradise and how well it works. I've seen it. I have absolutely seen it myself. Secondly, about this idea that there is a general desire, a general impetus to try to centralize power and to take it away from the sovereign states and from the people of those states. That is indisputably true. You only have to see all this huge structures of treaties and agreements and things. And of course, in Europe, we have felt it particularly strongly. In many, many programs, we have discussed how the EU Centre, which is absolutely part of this. I mean, the WEF started as an EU integration movement. It was the European something or other movement when it was first set up in the 60s. The EU Centre wants weak states, weak governments. It is fundamentally antagonistic to politics, as politics have normally been understood. We've discussed this many times in many programs on the Duran. And again, the result is incredibly bad decisions that are completely inconsistent with anybody's interests. And if you know anything about the state of Europe today, you can see how bad that is. But there's one specific question I want to ask you, because you identify the assassination of JFK as a key moment, about which, by the way, I completely agree. I really do agree. Okay. Is that the reason why there's been this enormous resistance to opening up the files about this? And is that perhaps something that the new president should be asked to give precedence to? Because there's so many unanswered questions about what took place then.
Yeah, it's going to be, this is the most important part of Trump winning, is who he's going to be picking around him. What people do know, I guess, that probably watch us, is the CIA came out of the OSS. And I firmly believe the Dulles brothers to be two of the worst people to have ever lived. And when you look at them and the construction of the CIA and then the other tentacles and all of that, it appears to me what I heard was that Pompeo was the one that did not want Trump to release the JFK files, and he was very disturbed by what was in them. Regardless, that must happen. I don't only think he should release the JFK files. I think he should declassify everything the American people need to know. And that's a lot. But starting with the JFK files. And the other thing that I think most people started to realize was that if we were lied to about the murder of a beloved president live on TV, and then we had subsequent murders of people that threatened the institutional power in DC. So that would be RFK, MLK, Malcolm X, many other people along the way, you can prove or not prove, were assassinations to maintain power in this post World War II kind of Bush New World Order plan. Then you start to really see that this is a time where I think we have been through enough that we can handle it. I really do think that this last 3.5 years really changed on a core level the American electorate and probably people all over the world in terms of I deserve to have answers about what happened there, the skepticism of the government and of this. But we also have to understand that everyone that has been in the FBI and CIA knows. So why does a small group of people know and not the entire country? And there's a reason for that. It is because I believe that what has gone on since then is anyone that would cover up. I mean, it feels like it's the mafia. If anyone would cover up crimes by our government against we the people or foreign nations such as Libya, that they would be promoted within the intelligence community rather than demoted. Much of our intelligence community has nothing to do with meritocracy. It has to do with secrecy. And that is a real problem. No, that was not what the Constitution was about. That is not what we the people pay our taxes for, to be hidden in the dark from what our country is doing. And I think what's very sad for me is I go around the country a lot and I meet so many veterans that fought in the Iraq War and in the Afghanistan War. And now, because so much has come out because of the lack of control of the narrative by the usual suspects in the mainstream media and beyond, a lot of veterans in America want answers about what we were doing in there and what the truth is and why we really went into Libya. It's not over. We still don't have answers. Why did we go into Iraq? Why did Wesley Clark come on stage and say Rumsfeld? And unfortunately, some of these criminals are dead, but said that Rumsfeld said we're going to these countries, and right after 9/11, and Wesley Clark was like, why? They weren't involved. And because the war on terror wasn't about a war on terror. It was that terror was never defined. It really was a time when I believe people like Dick Cheney and all of his friends decided, war for profit was better for them and somehow for the world, which it wasn't, which is why I always say to people, go read the Project for a New American Century document that Wolfowitz and Cheney and Kagan, all these people wrote. Would you ever have agreed with that plan for the future? So now is the good time because a lot of these plans have finally failed. They were on, I think, 100-year trajectory, some of these, and then certainly many World War II, post-World War II. I think also the UN has exposed itself as a fraud. The World Health Organization and UNESCO is basically money laundering, unnecessary agencies that are corrupt to the core. So, I mean, as hard as it's been, I think we're going through birthing pains of a better future for all of us. And, we have to be very honest, too, about what the United States, in terms of USAID, but also National Endowment for Democracy. Also, what has the IMF been doing all over the world? Because I'll tell you what, developing nations that have never developed in 75 years is a choice. If we're sending $200 billion to Ukraine, you're telling me we can't have clean water, vegetation, electricity, education, transportation all over Africa and South America? Of course we can. The reason is that we don't is because the whole scam of developing nations and all of this has to continue for the all the way up to the Bank of International Settlements to maintain power. So all of this power structure is so threatened. And I think that that's really what it was about. When I say they're not after America, they're after the world, and America's in the way. I feel that Donald Trump winning was the shot across the bow to these people to speed it up. And I think they went too fast. They were too arrogant. And now, we can all see the emperor wears no clothes, even if that's Klaus Schwab or somebody. Enough's enough. We don't want them anymore. Just get out of our countries.
Absolutely, because no other country has a constitution like the one that the United States has.
Right.
This is again something that, and always I made that point many times, and people always come back to me, but it's a fact. Again, as somebody who was involved in law and constitutional affairs, I can say this for an absolute fact: the whole legal and constitutional ethos in other places in Europe is completely different from the American. And one of the things that you have seen, and I really do think this is the case, is that at some point in the 1940s, 50s, America started to become Europeanized. And a lot of the culture of mid 20th century Europe started, and imperial Europe, by the way, because remember, we're talking about the Europe of the colonial empires. And of course, the militarist Europe of that time, with its standing armies and its constant wars and its great power politics and its spies and agents and all of those things, all of that started to find its way into the United States. And unfortunately, there were a lot of people there who took to it very well and liked it and thought that they could reproduce it because it gave them that sense of power that you found amongst the political elites in Europe. And it's always, always found it surprising that the US, which was initially constructed to be a repudiation of all of that, ended up becoming so much like it. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And I should say, if you look at someone like JFK, I said that, you see Trump and the way that he interacts with the American people. Now, they're very, very different personalities, but with JFK, it's exactly the same. You see the way JFK used to go out, speak to people, meet with them, talk to them. He liked them. And again, they liked him back. And no president between JFK and Trump has had that kind of same energy. So I wonder how it happened. How did America become Europeanized in that way? Is it something to do with the universities? Is it something to do with the East Coast elites, the banking and financial communities of the US? I should say, by the way, that if you're talking about Britain, which I think played the leading role in a lot of this, the British, and this is not made up history. It is well established academically recognized history here in Britain. The British in the late 19th, early 20th century actually said to themselves, we are exhausted. We can't continue like this. We are the weary Titan that carries on its shoulders the burden of the earth. Those are the words of the colonial secretary, Joseph Chamberlain. So who are we going to find to help us carry this burden? The Americans will come along and they'll do it for us. Why do the Americans do this to themselves? This is a question that I've always wondered.
Well, frankly, I think that you can look at the unholy alliance between the Council of Foreign Relations and Chatham House. And I think that you can look at Henry Kissinger and Zig Brzezinski as to how this happened. And you bring up the EU and the World Economic Forum. Well, again, you can also go right to the universities and even Operation Paperclip and the infiltration of a lot of our universities. And you can look at that the CIA and Henry Kissinger actually paid for the program that recruited Klaus Schwab to start the World Economic Forum so that they could basically connect Europe and America through the public-private partnership that most people couldn't see as they built their stakeholder stronghold on a regional scale. I think that's first and foremost. I also recall that Henry Kissinger said that he talks more to the crown than he does to the people in Washington, D.C. So if you're going to look at that, I still go back to the global public-private partnership and the institutions connected to them, including the IMF, the World Bank, the BIS, but also Chatham House and Council of Foreign Relations. These are all groups that until this past 2 years, I feel like nobody in America ever thought about, because by design, because many of the people in both of those, to me, the UK Chatham House is actually the parent company of the Council of Foreign Relations. But if you look inside those secret societies, as JFK would call them, because that's one of the ones I think he was talking about, you're going to find that it's very much based on not just globalism, but the media and the capture of the media, and this idea that, you have made it to the highest levels in media and journalism if you are asked to be a member of the Council of Foreign Relations here. And then they have all these events. If you remember, it was the Joe Biden quid pro quo, laughing about getting Shokin fired in Ukraine with a standing ovation at Council of Foreign Relations, when it should have been horror of, what are you talking about? You said you would hold back, money that was already passed and allocated if they didn't fire a prosecutor looking into your son and your family's business. And that's essentially what they did at the Council of Foreign Relations, to great applause. And then, you look at the World Economic Forum or Davos, and you watch some of the things they're saying, and the whole room erupts in applause. And you're thinking, that sounds like a dystopian nightmare. Why are they clapping over this? So, there is that. I mean, I really do hope that, I don't know what's going to happen with the EU, but I do find that they've been lied to on a massive scale about what the point was. I really think that the EU, the whole plan, if you do look all the way back to Kissinger and the recruitment and going off the gold standard and everything, it does seem it's between the billionaires and the bankers in America and the billionaires and the bankers in the UK that this was all constructed, and then throw in nonstop propaganda and entertainment and media and manipulation and military grade mind control and cognitive warfare, and you end up here to where they needed a pandemic to speed it along before we woke up and realized. And frankly, the pandemic failed, and hundreds of millions, if not billions of people on this planet realize that they've been deceived for decades. And that's where I hope that we have a global community of friends and citizens of all of our countries that realize right now what we are fighting, unfortunately, is not like World War II, where Germany is the enemy, or like, World War I, or even Vietnam, or anything like that. This is actually the people. This is a cognitive war, a war like the Satanist Colonel Aquino, who ran the U.S. Mind control military side for many years. This is a mind war. It's a different kind of war. It's an information, it's a manipulation, it's on every level. So to me, breaking that, which I think we've done, that's what I feel like. I feel like we've kind of broken the propaganda, psychological warfare matrix. We have a lot more work to do, but people like you guys and me and people watching this now see it very clearly. And that's where they failed. They didn't have the brains and the intellect and the training and the education system that brought up Kissinger and Brzezinski when this current group of world dominators came along. These guys got dumbed down with our kids,
Absolutely, because of course the system they want to create requires an erosion of proper academic rigor, and so the inevitable result is, I mean, I speak as somebody whose wife is an academic. What the result is of course the political elite degrades. It is inevitable. It's exactly what has happened. It atrophies, as it always does. I mean, if you remove, if you take away light and air, everything gradually slows down and dies. That is the actual way. That is the actual way it works. The very last thing I wanted to say is that one of the most interesting things is the way in which I agree with your perspectives. I should make that very clear, and I think they are authentic American perspectives. One of the most misleading and corrupting things is, of course, the other side talk all the time about the fact that they stand for American values, when in fact they stand for the exact opposite of those authentic American values. And one of the things that needs to happen in the United States and in the world, and I think which is happening, and one of the reasons why we're breaking through, is that there has to be a recovery of language. Language has to be used
Yes.
properly again. The Chinese Confucius came up this concept of the rectification of words. Words should be used clearly and simply and straightforwardly and in good faith and consistently. And I think we are making progress there, actually. But and that is obviously essential in any kind of proper democratic republican system, because if words change and shift and narratives are constructed which have no connection to reality all the time, then by definition, a proper republican government is impossible. So I think we are making progress on that too, simply by speaking clearly and straightforwardly in the way that we've been doing. So that's what I wanted to finish. But I just, if you want to say something about
I
that,
want
and
to
then I
say
get hand over
something
to
about
Alison.
that. I want to
Yeah,
say something about that because I have a couple friends. Well, I have a very close friend who is one of the only living survivors of MK Ultra, sold to the CIA when she was 3 years old, and didn't get out till she was 30. She testified to end it. But what we have to understand is that there's a level of manipulation and mind control that is military grade that did come out of Nazi Germany and was then perfected, I believe, over the last several years, along with technology and other things. So when you talk about the language, this is a giant problem. So if you ask me what needs to happen in DC, first and foremost, we should make lobbying illegal. Lobbying should not be allowed. It is the number one thing that takes away our votes and our voices in this country, especially lobbying by foreign countries in DC. We can't have a CCP lobbying firm, a Ukraine lobbying firm, an Israel lobbying firm within blocks of the Capitol. This is exactly what George Washington said never to have. Never have foreign governments or foreign leaders influencing our country, and we should never be in their countries, which is even worse of a problem. So lobbying has to be dealt with. Think tanks have got to be totally transparent in who's funding them and totally live up to some kind of standards to allow them to function, and should not be nonprofit. Okay, because that is not what's going on there. There's billions of dollars in grants and everything else. Again, I point a lot to USAID, which I believe to be the financial backing of a lot of these operations that the American people do not know about or never know about till decades later. We also have a real problem with 501s in this country, 501c3, 501c4. This idea that the IRS is giving tax breaks to global billionaire, NGOs that are working all over the world to do things that are none of our business in foreign countries. So there's a lot that can happen in DC. I'm very friendly with Kash Patel. And like you just said, I said to him, well, what are we going to do? He goes, we're going to use the Constitution. Okay, because the Constitution is very plain language. And like you just said, I put in Americans Anonymous the entire Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence, so people can read how clear the language is. Yeah. Now, what has happened here more than any other country, but certainly here, is called lawfare. And there are the worst people in the world that have been undermining America since the Clinton, but certainly the Obama administration, with Holder, and then all the fraud of Crossfire Hurricane, the total fraud and cover-up of the Mueller-Weissman report, the 2 fake impeachments, the fraud of 2020. I mean, this is a small group, mainly of lawyers, a lot of them connected to the Brookings Institute, Eisen, Weissman, McCord. People should know who these people are. First of all, they're behind all the lawfare that we see elsewhere, but they are also the purveyors of changing language. And I believe that the leader of this in America was somebody named Cass Sonstein, who came in under Obama. He's right now writing behind the scenes the border legislation for the border to keep it open forever. His wife also happens to be Samantha Power, the head of USAID, the former regime change warmonger. So what we do have to understand is that all of this, I believe, language, the manipulation of language, again, straight out of 1984, is about weakening the people so much so that they can't think at all. It's like erasing critical thinking and everything. And then imagine what they're doing to our kids, really coming from UNESCO, in my opinion. If you look through it in our country, what they're trying to do is make and this is very sad for somebody like me who really studied the 30s and 40s in Germany, is that they're trying to make a society of people who will never stand up for themselves, who are so confused and don't know what's right and wrong, who don't know what their rights are, who never read a constitution. They're told the constitution's out of date, who think the Bill of Rights is optional. Like they are educating, and a lot of this does go to Soros and his cohorts. There was Soros after the USSR fell. He actually has an interview where he calls it the Soros world order. But a lot of what is going on in terms of weakening the populace by dumbing them down, keeping information, changing language, all of that is exhausting. And there are these people that are lawfare. They even have the Lawfare Institute at Brookings. If you go check it out, at lawfare, and listen, it happened over there too, because they had the tactical group out of the World Health Organization with Cass Sonstein as well, that was pushing the nudge theory to get the vaccine. These people are a small group of people. Most of them are Poison Ivy League graduate lawyers. But the truth of the matter is that it's backfired. And what we do have to do is get back to language and get back to everyone in America understanding that there is very simple language that is what it is. And again, here we have the problem of the Marxist rogue judges, also from the same universities, that then allow this language to be manipulated. So until we get back to law and order as defined in our documents, we will have a difficult time. But for what you're saying about language, that is purposeful. And that is a joint venture, I believe, between the globalist billionaires that align with Soros and with the lawfare people that are mostly out of the Clinton and Obama DOJ that have aligned with the blob post 9/11 unconstitutional intel blob. And I don't think the lawfare crew or the 9/11 post 9/11 intel crew work for the United States of America. I frankly think they work for the parent company that runs America, and by any means necessary. They don't want to, when they say they want to protect democracy, they mean they want to protect themselves and their institutions, not us. They don't even consider the people. And that's why a lot of this needs to go by the wayside ASAP.
Thank you very much. I again should say that I completely agree with your last comments. As somebody,
I'll come on anytime.
As somebody who, as I said, is married to someone who is an English literature person, I mean, concerns about language, who, by the way, at this moment, as it happens, is reading Orwell. Just to say.
Oh, see that? Well, look at the description of the state, and that's what we're working with. They have no allegiance or alliance to any flag, any country, any people, any religion. It's not what this is about. It's straight out of 1984. Power for power's sake.
Correct. Just compare the language of the Constitution with its clarity and its simplicity, which speaks very directly to everybody, and just look at the kind of nonsense that is churned out every day by governments and the manipulative way in which that is written, and you see, you'll understand immediately that what has changed and where the problem is. And I'm not going to even start on the kind of things that the European Union churns out, which frankly you really don't want to read. It gives you a headache to do so. I'm going to hand over to Alex. I'm sure we got lots of questions. And Mel K, I wanted to say thank you. I have to leave for just a fraction of a moment, but I'll be back and I'll be listening to all the things that you're saying.
Okay, great.
You have
15, 20 minutes.
I have 5 minutes because I've babbled on so far.
Okay, let's go. Let's go get some questions for you from Nikos. I am not an optimist person, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hope. I do believe that Trump will end the war in Ukraine and stop World War III. Your thoughts?
100%. It's already in the works, been planned, many meetings. We don't need to see children dying anywhere on planet Earth in 2024 for the benefit of a very few people at the end of the day. So I not only do I think they'll end, I think we are going to see a renaissance in cooperation with the rest of the world like America has never seen before or been allowed to do.
Okay, great. Raul Pinto says, do you see anarchy orchestrated by the swamp to prevent Donald J. Trump from taking office in January?
Yes, because the lawfare people, as I mentioned before, the Eisen, Weissman, Brookings crew, they have been planning for this for a year. The good news is that I also happen to know so have the good people surrounding Donald Trump that maybe aren't in front of the cameras. So yes, they are going to try everything they can. They will fail. But they will try, and they will have a lot less opportunity to rise up like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all that again, because honestly, a lot of those people don't buy it anymore either. But between now, we have 76 days of craziness and lawfare coming at us, but I believe we'll prevail no matter what.
All right. Shane Cameron says, Cass Sunstein wrote the book Nudge. He was behind automatic 401k contributions in employees' contracts.
Right. True. Terrible guy.
All right. Regarding the Trump trying to, where is it? Sancho Relaxo says that they tried to take out Trump. You were talking about JFK. They tried to take out Trump. Your thoughts?
Twice they tried to take out
Yeah.
Trump, and I believe that it goes to these same people. We will have to investigate no matter what, and it's not about retribution. America needs to investigate Crossfire Hurricane and everyone that was in the room with Obama, because I am telling you right now, they are most fearful for themselves. They are willing to burn down America, so they are never held accountable, all the way up to Obama and Hillary Clinton. So frankly, I believe, thank God they did not succeed, but the fact that they were willing to do that kind of trauma and terror that would have happened had they succeeded should tell everyone who we're dealing with. They wanted another JFK. They wanted another psychological disaster meltdown of the people. They wanted it. And that's what we need to know. And again, that came out of DHS, Mayorkas, and it goes right up to the same team that has been involved since 2016 and got away with it, put themselves back in power. They need to be handled.
All right. We got two more, and we will let you go. From Sparky. Sparky says, Mel K, does Trump realize when people blame George Soros, they're actually blaming the CIA? Soros set up NGOs in the 80s to foment discord in Eastern Europe and helped the CIA ever since.
Yes, we're trying to get that out. There's people like me and Mike Benz and a bunch of other people out there who've been pointing out that George Soros is an operative of some sort that has been involved for a very long time. And a lot of the color revolutions around the world that, like I said, are everything that the founders of this country wanted nothing to do with, do lead to George Soros's NGOs. That's why I'm saying the 501c3, 501c4 model, open society doesn't pay taxes. So he gets to go around the world with grants from us through the State Department, also, I believe, CIA functioning, and destroy countries and overthrow governments. And of course, I believe that they're one and the same, just as I believe our State Department must be cleared out of people that align with that same network of Soros. And basically, these are the people, the parent company that believes that they're the stakeholders of the world and we should follow them. I think his days are numbered. And I think that we will see the collapse of the Soros network in the next 4 years.
All right. Final question from Sparky. Mel, is Trump keeping Pompeo around to play good cop, bad cop, not yet realizing that he now needs to rebuild trust with the rest of the world by openly and notoriously draining the swamp?
Well, there has been a lot of pushback since Trump brought up Pompeo on Joe Rogan. And by everyone that I know that is involved. So, and just on my show, I have to say, multiple people have come on my show that worked for Trump that feel the same way about Pompeo. I do not understand the use of Pompeo unless there's something else. I don't believe he'll have a position in the government. I really do not. There's too much pushback. And frankly, I think Pompeo should be held accountable for multiple things that he was involved in. Also, for being part of the CIA and not doing anything about it and allowing it to keep going, the Russia collusion hoax, when he could have done that in the first 2 years. So I don't understand why Trump would even trust him anyway, because he had eyes, as did Bill Barr, on all of the evidence that they were setting up against Trump, and they both did nothing. So we'll see what happens, but I'm very against Pompeo having anything to do with this government at all.
Arcane Eclectic says, please have Mel K on as a regular guest.
Anytime. I appreciate it so much, Alex. It was so much fun.
Thank you so much, Mel K.
Tell other Alex, that I look forward to the next time. Really appreciate
very
it.
quickly, where can people find you before we
themelkshow.com, themelkshow.com, free resource page there. I have a lot of the documents that have disappeared from the internet. So if you're looking for something, go check it out. And themelkshow.com, Mel K Show every night on Rumble and elsewhere. And I appreciate you so much, Alex. And the book is Americans Anonymous, Restoring Power to the People, One Citizen at a Time, not just for Americans, for all of us. Thank you so much.
Fantastic show. Thank you, Mel K. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care. Take care.
Bye, Alex. Bye.
Alexander, you're muted. You're muted. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to answer an urgent call.
No worries. No worries.
That was fantastic. I've really enjoyed such a program as much, if I can say.
Yeah, that was great. That was great.
Yeah.
Fantastic guest, Mel K.
I will be reading. I do hope we do get the JFK papers published, and I will go through them with a microscope.
I think it's going to be a lot of stuff to go over.
Oh, I will still go through them with a microscope. Don't worry. I'm good at that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes. We know. You'll be able to analyze them in only the way that you can, and you will pass everything over to our viewers as well. I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, what do you think before we answer the questions? Do you think Trump will release them?
Yes, I think he will. I think he's promised to. I think he understands the importance of it. He's got people like Mel K to remind him about it. And I'm sure that, I don't know whether they know each other, but she belongs in the political world that has enabled him to become president. And I think his own inclination, his own very strong inclination, is to do it as well. And of course, remember, there's somebody else there in his team, RFK Jr., who will also want them to be released. So I think we'll get the JFK papers released and the RFK papers released, and it'll be very, very interesting to see what they say. I still don't think they'll be complete, by the way, because, again, I speak now from experience. An awful lot of the most important things will have been destroyed.
Destroyed?
Absolutely. No question about it. Things do get destroyed, but when they are destroyed, you sense, if you really know how to read documents and archives, which I do, you quickly see where the gaps are, and the gaps themselves tell a story.
Okay.
And you can't destroy everything. That is the other thing. You find references to a particular document which you can't find in another document. And that also leads you down some rather interesting, in some rather interesting directions. But on something like the JFK thing, it is inconceivable that everything is still there. But what is still there is going to be very interesting, and it will, as I said, it will answer a lot of questions.
All right, let's answer some questions.
Yeah,
Alexander.
Yeah.
From Ilya Kuryakin says, first was Federal Reserve Act. Second was conspiring against Henry Wallace. The third was Bretton Woods. Fourth, CIA. And the fifth was JFK.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I understand why Mel K. I don't disagree, by the way, but I can understand why Mel K. has focused on JFK, because in a sense, that was when the change became visible. And it did, because up to that point, we had not had this vast political secret state superstructure that existed in America. And it really came into its own after JFK was killed, or when JFK was killed.
Right. And Ilya Kuryakin says you'll need X-ray vision because 99% will be blacked out with regards to
Oh, well,
JFK.
Well, I hope not. That is of course the other big question. I mean, when these documents are released, will they be released completely? I mean, bear in mind we're talking about something that happened. What was it, 60 years ago now? There's hardly likely to be any information there that is sensitive in terms of genuine national security concerns today. I mean, the Soviet Union, which is the adversary, doesn't exist anymore. So, I mean, what would be the justification for blanking things out and keeping things secret? The amazing, the extraordinary thing is you can actually get a lot more information now in Russia from the archives there than you can from the US. And I'm not going to even start with Britain.
Yeah.
It's true. You can read all the paperwork that was produced by Stalin's office, for example. It's all available. It's accessible to researchers, and of course, you can't get the same level of information about an awful lot that happened in the United States. That is the remarkable thing.
Sparky63 says, break it off in BlackRock by spoiling their Ukraine plans. Make Ukraine Russia again. Yeah,
well, I'm sure that's probably where we're heading. I hope everybody here is aware of the fact that the Russian Foreign Ministry has published a very, very powerful statement about the Ukrainian conflict. I discuss it in my program that's coming up on my channel today, in which they say that whatever happens, we know Donald Trump, we're familiar with him, he's well known in Russia, but all the objectives of the special military operation will be achieved. Full stop.
Yeah. Nico says, channeled my inner daredevil from S03 in yesterday's comments. It feels so good to see Democrats, the elite, and the Marxist woke mob melt down.
Absolutely. It's been absolutely marvelous. It's been incredibly enjoyable. It's almost worth it if nothing else happens. I mean, just to see them have this complete collapse. For one thing, a lot of them here in Britain really did believe that Kamala was going to win. I mean, they really persuaded themselves of it. And not a lot of them, most of them.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Steve Turley had a great show today where he actually had all of the expert opinions saying that Harris was going to win, like Bill Maher's, all these people. Who was the documentary filmmaker? I forgot his name. Michael Moore, and they were predicting. They were predicting Harris. They were confident she's going to win. She's got it.
Absolutely, she's got it.
Yeah. And he just documented all of it.
I know. Relying heavily on a single opinion poll in Iowa of 800 people. I mean that really. Anyway, don't get me to start on that one.
Nico says, Duran, you are busy, but I need to see you with the 3 guests I suggested. Dima. I think Dima we have in the works.
We've had.
Yeah, I think we're working on that. Dimitris Liatos working on that, and Nerdrotic, we are working on that as well. Yeah. I finally convinced Daniel Davis to bring Andrei Martyanov to the show. Convinced you too. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nikos, for that. We are working on all of the suggestions. Sparky says, keep in mind, Israel has killed many more Americans than Iran has. Remember the USS Liberty, where they killed 34 Americans.
I believe that is true.
Fuzzy Ball says, are the futures of Hungary and Slovakia as members of the EU or as BRICS members? What would be the ramifications if EU members defect to BRICS?
Well, we'll see. I have to say this, coming back to the things that Mel K was saying. If the United States actually opts out of the globalization project, there isn't going to be an EU for very long. Without the US, the whole thing becomes completely unsustainable, and that is the truth. So very soon we might start to see countries like Hungary and Slovakia achieving levels of independence and levels of agency that they have not known until now. To just let you all into a secret, I'm in contact with someone in Hungary at the moment who is well connected, and I've been very interesting to hear what this person has been saying.
Miss Texas G says, the reason people were surprised that Harris won is because of people like me, secret Trump voter. We don't talk to pollsters. We don't have stickers on our cars, flags of Trump in our yards. Short of having our phones, you have no idea who we are and we were there by the millions.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. In a way, that's a very, very sad thing that people feel that they can't be open about their preferences. It's quite amazing.
Little Eddie on Locals put a link to. I have to go over this, Little Eddie, but he says, well worth the read and getting out there. We must do it now. Do it all, because if we fail, then the essential services that everyone believes we should have will not be able to be funded, and virtually everyone in the United States will become economically destroyed. These are the stakes. It's a link about the markets and the economies, Alexander, which we're going to have to go through. Yeah,
Indeed, and this is going to be a major problem for Donald Trump, because contrary to what the propaganda has been saying, he's got a very, very difficult economic legacy that Biden has left to him.
Yeah. Ija Bochi says, thank God for the Duran and their guest speakers. Thank you for that. Six Teeth says, hello from Denmark, non-brainwashed Trump supporter. Hello, Six Teeth. Chili Pepper says, Trump wants Brian Hook, Supreme Neocon, to lead the transition team at the State Department. Hook was the head of the Iron Action Group in Pompeo's State Department.
Well, just wait.
I don't think that's confirmed 100%.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
I was going to say exactly. And the point I'm going to make is, at the moment, there's an awful lot of toing and throwing and pushing and people maneuvering and people coming out and saying things. This is a sign that there are lots of people trying to maneuver and push Trump in particular directions. Doesn't follow that is actually what he intends to do. Yeah.
I actually talk about that in my video, but it's still a rumor. It might be true, but at this point, I don't think it's confirmed. Tish M says, justice for Gonzalo Liro and justice for Julian Assange. Thank you, Tish, for that. Amazing super chat. Sheila Grace says, dream team conversation, hands down. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Tish M says, taxation without representation. Hashtag taxation without representation. Herman Dormel, thank you for that super sticker. Tish M says, I believe the people are what's holding themselves down. Freedom is ours. Find out how. Please interview Safia Dean Amos, author of The Bitcoin and Flat Standard. He's such a nice man, too.
Okay, good.
Yes, that would be an interesting stream, interesting show. Serge Stelmack, welcome to the Duran community. Chris says, there is a clip of CNN saying Kamala didn't outperform Biden in any county, 3,244. Statistically impossible. That's two elections. That were blank. Yeah. Yeah, I heard that too. Sancho Relaxo says Trump got shot at FFS. He will release JFK docs.
Yeah, I think so. I think he will.
Snowy says regarding yesterday, Mike Pompeo spoke at Trump's rally in Reading, Pennsylvania on November 4th, 2024.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Pompeo is there. Lindsey Graham is there. All of these people are still there. But, I mean, it doesn't mean they'll be at the center. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're not going to give up power that easy. Yeah. They'll try every way to connect with Trump or to sabotage Trump or both. Right? Yeah. I mean, they're not going to give up.
No,
Willem, thank you for that super sticker. Sir Mugs Game says, if Pompeo and Bolton mated, they'd spawn an abomination like Tom Pickencotton, and Coulter has warm and fuzzy thoughts about him. So no bueno. Thank you for that, Sir Mugs Game. Sancho Relaxo says, between now and January 20th is a very dangerous window.
Oh, true enough.
Sir Mugs Game says, what's left for Liz Cheney? Crawl back up the Chrysler building and perch on the northeast corner. Warding off evil spirits is technically a job.
I'm afraid I don't think we've heard the last of Liz Cheney, to say this straightforwardly. I mean, these people are still there. They're still well connected. They're still powerful. We should not be under any illusions about that.
Jeff Bickford says thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Life of Brian says, I donated $1 to Act Blue so I could get $1,000 worth of spam texts. If done at scale, not only does the DNC lose money, but their donor lists are spoiled.
Oh, okay.
Basil says, Joe Biden was assistant in Frank Church committee.
I didn't know that. That doesn't surprise me.
Sparky says, Mel, don't trust Kash Patel. He wants war with China and wanted to keep Assange locked up. Sir Musgame says, there's serious chatter that in Ukraine and the EU, more rat lines have been laid than on 17th century Spanish galleon. Can the Pied Piper lead them to their demise?
Yes, I've heard the same thing, that people are now in Ukraine. They're now definitely looking for how to get out of this mess, how to get out of Ukraine as soon as they can. That there is already this kind of assessment taking place. We just have to see. And I also have heard that the men on the front lines, the Ukrainian soldiers, are very demoralized at the moment. They've been led to think again that Kamala was going to win, and they're now very, very shocked by what has happened. But anyway, we'll see what happens.
James Edwards says, I feel the joy of being unburdened by what has been.
Yeah.
Cactus Ray, thank you for that super sticker. Chris says, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins, first edition, explains how central banks and multinational corporations steal.
Yeah.
Basil says, you can't speak the truth if they kidnapped the dictionary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rectification of words. It's a very powerful concept. And as I said, it was one that Confucius, at a time of war and chaos, he spoke about the great importance of it all the way back then. And we've never needed it more than now.
From GL1416, how did the establishment, Obama, etc., push out Biden from the candidacy? How do they have the power to do that?
Well, I think that is an excellent question, and one we should get answers to. I mean, there was that very mysterious, was it tweet that was published, which supposedly was written by, was a tweet, exactly. I mean, all kinds of odd things of that kind. There's an awful lot about that story that has not been explained, and we need to find out about it. By the way, can I just say something? Since somebody's brought up Obama, this whole affair, this election, I think should have punctured the myth of Obama completely. First of all, he's made a whole series of absolutely, from his point of view, catastrophically bad decisions. I mean, it was he who was responsible for making Biden president, because he basically maneuvered him as the Democratic Party's contender in January 2020. He phoned up all of the Democrats and all the other contenders, apart from Bernie Sanders, and got them all to stand down and endorse Biden. He maneuvered Biden to accept Kamala Harris. He got Kamala Harris. He then got Biden to step down. He brought Kamala Harris forward. And then, of course, he campaigned for her in an utterly disastrous way. I mean, lecturing people in a most unpleasant way. I mean, whatever one may think of Obama, I mean, he not only clearly has completely lost his touch, but he's made a whole succession of disastrously bad calls. He is obviously not a wizard.
No, he's not. Joe Public says, BlackRock owns the world. Vanguard owns BlackRock. Rich West says, how much does GCHQ interfere in our American political process?
That is an excellent question to which I do not know the answer.
GL1416 says, Alexander, do you have any book recommendations on how the world really works? Who has power? How does government work? In praxis, not theory.
You know, this is a good question. I don't really. I'm sure that it's dispersed over many books. I mean, Mel K's book probably touches on this. I don't think any single book brings it all together in one place, perhaps because this is too big a thing. And every one of us has seen aspects of the who've been in government, has seen aspects of this. I mean, I'll give you one example from my own experience. I used to be a secretary of a committee that worked in London in the legal system. That committee, in theory, never existed. It didn't appear on any wire diagrams. And I was absolutely astonished at the kind of decisions that were made in that committee, completely unaccountably and without any real record. And I had to write up the minutes of that committee. And I had to make sure, because that was what I was required to do, that those minutes reflected certain perspectives which didn't often reflect what was actually discussed there. So that goes on all the time. It is right through the whole system. How do you bring this all together? I'm sure there are books that cover this, but experience says a great deal. And I've been talking to others, people who were in British government, who've actually been in the cabinet office recently, in Boris Johnson's time, for example. Not Kwasi, my friend, the MP, the politician, but others who were there. And as it's very difficult to put it all together in one place and to understand and to see how it all was.
King's Coat says, good one off topic, but could you guys get a Japan expert for a stream? New government, international alignments, etc.
And I'm thinking of one particular person who, I'm interesting that you said that, because I was reading an interview that this person has given, he's Japanese, about Japanese politics. And I was very, very impressed by him. And he explained an awful lot about Japan and about Japanese foreign policy. I can't remember his name, but I would be very interested in having him as a guest on the Duran.
Red Z says, hey fellas, future looking brighter. Congrats to everyone.
Absolutely.
Russell Hall says, when it comes to the likes of Bolton, Pompeo, Graham, etc., Trump should grasp that it is best to keep his friends close and his enemies far the hell away.
I completely agree with you. I am absolutely of that view. I think that bringing these people into the inner circle is bad news. It's introducing the fox into the chicken coop.
Yeah. Basil says 11/22/1963 was the day the Constitution of the United States was assassinated.
Yeah, lots of people think this. I mean, and I think there's a lot of truth in that too, by the way.
Darren Levy says, do you think Stahmer will try to play Trump like Blair played Bush? Example, the Middle East wars.
No, he can't. He's not got anything like Blair's brains. I have to say that. And whatever. I mean, I should make it clear. I mean, I'm not only didn't like Blair. I never liked Blair. I actually, because I could see that he was going to win the election in '97, I made sure that I was out of Britain when the election in 1997 happened, because the idea of Blair being elected filled me with horror. But I am the first person to acknowledge that in some respects he was a very clever man. Stahmer isn't clever in that kind of way. He doesn't know how to manipulate, and he certainly wouldn't be able to manipulate anybody in Washington today.
Chris says, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins' first edition, explains how the game is played by central banks and multinational corporations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sir Mug Game says, should we brace ourselves for Secretary of State Kushner? He's American Talleyrand after his brilliant work in the Middle East. So say some top-notch weirdos. Actually, Trump said he's not going to have any family members in his administration.
Yeah.
He came out and said that.
Yeah, I think Kushner will be there. Though he is a clever man, by the way.
Yeah, we'll see. Ahmed K says, it honestly feels like the world is a better place after the election of Trump. A big sigh of relief.
I completely agree. By the way, I mean, I've also had people in London who've contacted me and told me the same thing. Others whom I know are deeply upset and furious about it. But some people I know, surprising people, have come forward and said, this is a huge relief. It's like a lifting of a burden.
Elsa says, I don't want to be too pessimistic, but who would end up in the White House if Trump didn't survive until the inauguration? Theoretically, it's a bit suspicious that the Democrats are so calm.
This is an excellent question. I don't know the answer because I don't know the constitutional setup. If the president-elect is assassinated, then I presume that the electoral votes that belong to him would pass to the vice president, the man who's picked as vice president. So it would be J.D. Vance, I presume.
Yeah, I think that's spot on.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Sir Mouse Game says, will we see Trump International Gaza with Ivanka Lot and others partying in the Joe Biden Memorial Presidential Suite?
I'm not sure I've understood the question.
Yeah. Will we see Trump International Gaza with Ivanka Lot and others
Gaza.
partying? Yeah, and others partying in the Joe Biden Memorial Presidential Suite.
I'm still so sure clear understand the question. The rumors are they're just rumors. I want to say this. If you're talking about the war in Gaza, that Trump has basically communicated to Netanyahu that he wants everything to be ended as quickly as possible and wants ceasefires in Gaza and Lebanon, and he would prefer them to happen before he becomes president. You may believe that. I'm not so sure that it's true, but that's the rumor anyway.
Sparky says, during the period Trump went to military school was when kids who were hanging around the wrong people went to military school. Perhaps Trump hanging around Pompeo is a throwback to his childhood.
Well, who knows? Yeah.
Mark Hewitt says, Trump got 1.5 million less votes than in 2020. Harris, 14 million votes less than Biden in 2020. Will someone start asking questions again about Biden's 81 million votes?
Lots of people are asking questions, lots and lots of people. And I think Steve Bannon has come forward and said that the whole thing really needs to be revisited.
Yeah. Tish M says, love you, Alex Alexander. Correction, it's the Fiat standard by author Safiuddin Amos.
Right, okay.
By author Safiuddin. Okay, we'll contact Tish and we'll try to get him on. Sir Mug Game says, say what you will, the Ukraine soldiers still fighting the Russians seem like the type to ride into hell with a bucket of water.
Yeah, I mean, there are some Ukrainian soldiers who are incredibly tough and very brave and very motivated and very committed. I think that that group of soldiers is still there, but their numbers have shrunk. A lot of other Ukrainian soldiers who've been recruited more recently are not of that kind of view. And I suspect it's the second that are very demoralized now.
And Basil says, Obama used to be Obama, Oprah used to be Oprah, Biden used to be Biden.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, Alexander, as I do.
It was a great program. Certainly the election has, as I said, created shockwaves around the world. I mean, it really has, especially in Europe. And the events in Germany, which are incredibly interesting, by the way, this sudden collapse of the German government are connected to the election in the US. Clearly, Lindner could see that it was coming.
Yeah, he could. And poor Olaf Scholz, a hostage to the Greens. He's a hostage to the Greens. Pathetic.
It's incredible, unbelievable. I mean, you know, the Chancellor of Germany should be controlled by people like Habeck and Baerbock. Seems bizarre. It is amazing.
Yeah.
And the German people should be controlled. Their whole government should be controlled by people like that. Who, let's never forget, they never polled more than 15% of the.
Yeah, there's like 15% of
No.
Why do they give them so much power and so much? Why? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Any sense? No.
Unless someone is telling him to give them power.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I can't explain it any other way.
No.
But they control the government.
Absolutely. I mean, the last 3 years has been the government by the Greens.
All right. We will end it there, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's end it there. Thank you to everyone that watched us on Odyssey, on Rockfin, on Rumble, and Locals, and YouTube. Thank you to our moderators, Tish M, Zariel, Peter, T. Jordan, Brett, and that's everybody. Brett Harris, that's everybody. Yeah. Thank you to our moderators for everything that you do. And thank you to Mel K.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic show. I will have all of her information as a pinned comment down below. Thank you to everyone that watched us on the Duran.locals.com. And we will end it there.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care.